Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And I will introduce myself, and there he is. All right. We are live. So let's let a few people on. Hi, Lexi. Hi, Abby. Okay, so we'll get going because I needed to set that up for a minute, so we're already a little bit behind schedule. But anyway, my name is Mollye Miller Shehadeh, and I am the visual art editor for Fatal Flaw magazine. And I am joined today by our distinguished guest, Eric Robinson. And we are just going to basically launch into a conversation, a chat. I've been basically fangirling since the day I learned about Eric, about his work, and I'm just like, I want you to submit to the magazine. I'm just a big fan. And then, you know, all of us at Fatal Flaw were like, just yes, 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 to his work. And it came to be that we wanted his work to be the cover of volume 9, which I have here to show everyone, unless if you haven't seen. So there we have it. That's the cover, and Eric is the author, the painter of this gorgeous work of art. So I will go back to my face here, but yeah, and we'll show other work and all that. But first, I guess just first tell us a little bit about you, Eric, just basically where you are in the world, and also and hi to all everyone who's joining. I love it. And
oh my god, hi.
Yeah, so tell us just a little bit. I know it's hard to just say, tell us a little bit about yourself.
No.
But, you know, where are you, and tell us something about yourself that you want to make sure we all know.
So I am a Maryland-based artist. I went to Virginia Commonwealth University for communication arts, but painting was my focus. So after that, I transitioned into tattooing. But
Yes.
in the meantime, in between all of that, there was still dance and photography. So there's just been like a little mix of everything going on at all given times.
Yes.
So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool though.
So Virginia Commonwealth University, right? That's what you said. Yeah. And I know they have an incredible art program, so that's amazing. And you graduated when?
Spring 2021. So like not too long ago, but just long enough to like for it to be like, whoa, like that much time's passed now. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. I would have never thought that this would be like the outcome, but I'm really happy.
So, okay, well, that's incredible. Like, I mean, yeah, you talked about the tattoo business that you've started or are part of, or
yeah, so I ended up starting tattooing back August last year, and it's literally been like incredibly like it's been like in so nice, like it's been like it gets me like every time, like it's been incredible. Like it is so insanely awesome. Like it's not what I thought I'd be doing ever, but I'm just incredibly thankful for it to have found me, sincerely. So I'm kind of coming off from like a travel like jet lag. Well, not even jet lag. Travel, just like travel where. I guess. Like excuse me.
Because that okay. Well, we'll back up and we'll get into that because yeah, you just told me that you got back from New York, and I want to hear about that. But okay. So this actually might have something to do with your thoughts maybe on agency. So when I had said, hey, you know, Eric, I really like your work. I would love for you to submit to our magazine, to Fatal Flaw. The topic for volume 9 was agency. And in your submission, you wrote a lot of really interesting things about agency and why, like how your submission sort of spoke to it. So I wondered if you wanted to say a little bit about maybe even the painting that is the cover in particular, or however you kind of want to address it. And just like, yeah.
So own. I think that in general, agency is pretty much how you govern yourself and being aware of that, but also being aware of how your actions and otherwise language is perceived by others and how you go about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like art specifically, I think that it also carries into how you present yourself as a creative in your own field, niche, expertise, what have you be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going along with what you do to make the best image of yourself in your image. Otherwise, like everyone has their own way of going about things, and like some people take a more professional approach, some people take a more casual approach, and it's truthfully what works best for them. So that's their own sense of agency.
Yeah.
And that also goes like into life, like how they represent themselves as an artist will also be how other people see them as a person. And so there's the whole divide between artists and artwork, but there's, if anyone ever like sees me from social media, it's always, oh, like paintings, not like, oh, like what's going on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
I
okay.
guess
I see what you mean. Like when they come to see your work on social media, you're like, this, what's going on is that I'm painting, and like that's kind of who I am. That's what I want to present about
right, or like,
myself.
or
Yeah.
just like or some assumption, whether it be right or wrong or completely accurate, just based on, I guess, how I present my artwork or how I present myself as an artist. And it's cool to be able to be aware of that and also change that as I need be.
Mm. Yeah, that is really powerful. That just like a little like twist in the perspective or in the way that you like show up or kind of just convey yourself or present yourself to other people, and you can switch that like almost like I don't say magic, but you know what I mean, like it's sort
You
of
have to be
like,
able to be like on your feet,
yeah, and
100%.
it takes that like kind of creative prowess to be thinking like, okay, well, how am I presenting myself, and do I like this way that people are seeing me? I mean, I wonder
Right.
if that has to do with the self-portraiture that you do,
Mm-hmm.
or does that come from kind of studying that in school and kind of liking that as an art form?
The self-portraiture at first started out from just simply needing an immediate reference that was of my own source. So that later evolved into how how can I present myself without presenting myself, because my
Mm-hmm.
my general assumption is that when I do self-portraiture, unless I announce it, like people don't, or unless people actually see me, like they don't know it's a self-portrait, and sometimes they don't even know the self-portrait. I'm like standing right next to it, and
Okay.
I think it's really cool to be able to control that as well. So
I'm gonna
it's
flip
just
this.
there were a few different factors behind the self-portraiture. In college, started like the budding of that. So, and then I actually also I have like the
Oh
model.
yeah.
Okay. So,
Oh, okay, yes.
there we go.
Okay, so that is the piece. So that is the painting. Yeah. So it's the only reason I can't. It's really cool to see it in real form. It is like there's a bit of a glare, so I'm gonna. People are definitely gonna be able to see it better here. I know
Yeah,
you told me that
this layer is like the.
you've done some updates to it as well, so you can kind of like talk about that as well. Um, but I did want to know just about this piece. Well, I mean, I can tell this is a self-portrait in triplicate, like as a trio.
Yeah.
So maybe talk about like how this came to be, and I know it's kind of a big question, but essentially, like why is it in triplet form, and then also maybe just a little bit about your approach, your brushwork, and kind of things like that, and your colors, because that's what really drew me to this. Is I know you had like blue hair here, so
Yeah.
that's part of it, but
It changes every
but
now
just
and then, but no. So
yeah.
there wasn't too much of like a really deep approach to the start of this painting. A lot of my paintings actually end up having meaning or a concept post like creation. So
Yeah.
eventually, uh, this was during the time, my dogs.
Oh my gosh. Oh, we love dogs at Fatal Flaw. So, you know, if you want to show somebody off, you feel free to do so.
He's already in there, already like interrupted. So I'm just like, yeah, this is the go there.
Oh,
But
that
that's
was a bigger dog than I thought it was going to be. That was amazing.
So this was definitely made during the time that I was working with my mentor, Miguel Carter Fisher. And a lot of my emphasis from part of the apprenticeship was making sure that I had a really solid technical foundation, and then playing around with concept here and there. But I never really started out with a concept in mind per se. Like I'm gonna say this for all my pieces at least. So it kind of, as I created it, it kind of ended up having its own message. And I didn't really realize it at the time, which ends up happening a lot too with my artwork. And it ends up being a cathartic like moment. It ended up speaking to a lot of my imposter syndrome that I faced in like the art world, and that I still do face, but like that's kind of everyone. And it didn't hit me until a little bit later after I changed it up a few, and I added more red tones, more emotional color emphasis, and then
so
it just kind of into itself.
And then just like I want to speak a little bit more about this one, especially because of the title. So it's called Ego Death. Me sort of just spoke to that a little bit, but what does that sort of mean to you? And also just a relationship with titles. You have really interesting titles for your pieces, and we'll talk about a few of those. But how do those kind of come to be? How do you, or I guess the order, do you kind of think, oh, I'm going to paint something about ego? In this case, it didn't happen that way, but yeah, just tell us a little bit about the title for this one.
Yeah, so the Ego Death title pretty much came to be. I knew I was painting a lot of self-portraiture at the time, and like I knew that like in painting this, it was literally just like three of me back to back to back. It felt somewhat vain, or at least like I felt that it could be perceived as vain. So I kind of just wanted to dispel that for myself through the painting, because either way, once something is created and is put out there, it's no longer in my hands. Like no matter what my message is, no matter what, like anyone can take it any kind of way. So it was a really big moment of surrender to be able to like just work past that like mental barrier for myself.
That's really neat, and I appreciate that the title sort of was able to serve like a higher purpose for you in a way, that it dispelled this kind of myth that was forming around the painting itself as you were doing it. One of our editors had asked what you kind of felt when you were painting this, and I guess we could stretch that to say like when you're painting self-portraits maybe in general. You touched on it a little bit right there, but I just wondered, like, let's say with just this painting, like what was how did you feel doing it? Because you're also having to look at yourself a lot, so like what is that kind of like just emotionally when you're going into it?
If memory serves correctly, I believe the final posted product pretty much happened like it start to finish, like a day, so like from day to night. So I was feeling really energized to actually like start a new piece, and then halfway through I was like, okay, like I'm like really tired, but I could keep going and like see where that actually takes me. So then I just decided to keep going and actually experiment with myself in terms of lighting situations from night to day. So the painting, I guess if you're looking at it from like in the cover, day, right, it gets light, it gets more pale and lighter as like it goes, and that's just a matter of color and light.
With this is what
yes, so
mean,
the
like...
angry face to sad face, there we go. It was day to night, and pretty much as like, you know, night grew darker, my perception of color and light changed, and so did the painting as well.
See, that is so fascinating. Oh, I love that. Like I'm always kind of torn when I'm like at a museum or a gallery, and I'm like, well, I want the work to be able to speak for itself.
Mm.
But when you add like a little anecdote like that, or you title it something like really interesting, that's not just, you know, some titles I don't. But anyway, I like that
I know.
title, and I like how it adds to it. Sometimes it can subtract from it. The story can subtract from it because you're kind of like, well, I liked what I had in my mind more. But
Right.
I love that. That just like adds this wonderful story to it. Oh,
It was a little.
and yeah.
It was something I learned from, well, my mentor, my Carter Fisher, and I just want to try that for myself. Not gonna lie, it was fun to be able to experiment with that and like have that service purpose for that time.
Well, you've brought him up before. Say his name again,
Miguel Carter Fisher.
Carter Fisher. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I started following him on Instagram. He's really, really, really talented. Maybe this would be a good time just to talk about like mentorship and how important that is to you as a young artist. And
so, I mean, I think that mentorship quite literally is incredibly important. I know for a fact that I would not be the painter or artist that I am today without, working with Miguel. And he put into it as much as I also put into it, and sometimes even more. So he made sure, which is what I believe all mentors like should do, that like when I graduated, promoted, like I had a solid foundation and the tools like I needed to actually produce artwork in the way that I wanted to specifically, and like navigate technical mediums and conceptual narratives in a more coherent and thoughtful way and precise.
oh, I mean, yeah, I think that is it's so important for any artist, any creative, or maybe I guess in any field, but especially in the creative arts, because you can a little bit get lost in your own ideas about yourself or your ideals or your expectations and all these things, and you need to be, I think, constantly growing, and most importantly, especially like in the university setting, like learning. And it sounds like he was able to do both really well for you.
You need to be humble, 100%. You
Yeah.
definitely need to have someone there to humble you. If you have 1,000 people around you saying like, "Oh my God, good job," you're never gonna think you're doing a bad job. But in terms of like young creatives, I wish almost that there was more of a, I guess, plainly easier way for mentorship, but I also understand like from people who would be in the mentor position, like it takes a lot. So there's just like a give and take situation. So and that aspect, like, mentorships are like for people that definitely have them, like if they're good, you have it good. You got it.
You got it really good. Yeah, I think that I want to be able to just and we can continue talking about whatever, but I want to make sure that I'm also showing other works of yours, just a little bit of the ones that we have currently in volume 9, and this one, I just wondered if you could say a little bit about this, and also before the call, it's actually right behind you. We talked about it being like the actual painting is behind you.
Yeah.
If we could talk about the photo that it came from, because I think that's kind of a neat thing to show too. If you
Aphrodite's Acolyte. So a lot of my paintings have a lot of repetitive bases, I guess, in terms of like, so I don't typically paint people that I don't know. So all of my paintings, for the most part, are of friends. So my one in particular, who this is of Aphrodite's Acolyte. It's like I'm always such really pretty, and so
yeah,
I want to like take a moment to just like accentuate all of that, especially with like the violet like overtone and it's like the pose, the lighting, all of that. The title.
Yes. Well, yeah. Okay. Speak to the title because that's Aphrodite's Acolyte.
So,
just
I'm not gonna lie. If I have a moment to have alliteration, I'll take it. I'll definitely take it.
That's cool. So, but I wondered if I could also show the photo that you took
Mhm.
And wait, I just need to flip forward for a second. Okay, there we go. So this is the photo that you took of her.
Mhm.
You also do photography.
Yeah.
I'm not just do photography. You are also a photographer. And so this is a gorgeous portrait, and you could have just said, "Okay, that's good. I feel like that's a beautiful piece of artwork I've put into the world."
Mhm.
But then you use that as the basis for the painting. And so I wonder, like, also about the medium that you're using. So you're using oil,
Mhm.
and I'll go back to the anyone. I don't. I'm like, don't look ahead, everybody. Um, so if you want to kind of talk about the actual medium, so you're using gesso board, so which is like a panel, or tell me more.
So the surface itself is gesso board. The medium is oil,
Mm-hmm.
oil paint. The gesso board itself, I specifically use ampersand gesso board. Love
Mm-hmm.
the it's a sturdier surface compared to canvas. Overall, and depending on the type that you get, it's pretty much more resistant to warping, or damage in general, something like the surface, of course. But I have a heavy hand naturally in painting,
Mm-hmm.
specifically painting. So I
Okay.
just appreciate being able to just like actually like mark like an actual like surface and get more emphasis. I'm not a fan of the feedback with canvas. And at the same,
Okay. You could tell me a lot more, and you
and
could you could probably talk
I
all
could keep going
day
for like
about it.
years about one specific thing. So like yeah, I'll try to keep it a little
No,
bit.
I love that. And I didn't know, I don't know a lot about like oil painting and like the practice of it, but I do know that painting on wood is a very different experience than painting on canvas, and you get a very different look. Um, or the gesso board, I guess
It's
it's similar to a
um,
wood.
like a hardboard material, and then like there's a like a regular canvas, there's gesso over that, but there's like an actual texture underneath that's like toothy with the ones that I get at least. So I get to like actually build up more texture that way too from the ground up.
That's really, really neat. Um, and then so, oh, did you have one that you wanted to show
Oh,
us? Or you?
like there's a slight this glare is like maybe not the best, and I don't know if the light helps at all. I don't think it did much. There's probably even a better example in the picture, honestly. But uh, I usually don't have to build up too much because I rely on the surface of the gesso board, so I can save my
I
like
see.
really good paints for like the very end.
Um, Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I do have a detail
Mm-hmm.
another piece, so we'll go to that one. So there's a series that you've done that's gotten a lot of attention. There's one of the series is right behind you, the black
Yeah,
and gold
yeah. Sorry,
series. So I was gonna bring it up as the triptych,
oh,
and then you can kind of, sorry for this little like icon thingy, but you know. I wondered if you could talk to us about this, and also like they're so powerful individually, and then when I learned it was a triptych, I was even more blown away. And they have just this life force in them that just gets, I think it hits everyone so hard when you see them. And so I would love to know more about these, and also like I might go individually when you're kind of talking about them if you're open to it, and I can flip through so we can look at more detail of each one. But yeah, tell us something about these.
yeah. So thank you so much. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
the Black and Gold series was pretty much my last little tidbit towards my alma mater.
Mm-hmm.
But it really was like a, an unofficial senior thesis. Pretty much just kind of getting into the nitty gritty of what institutions don't really advertise or
Mm.
play up or even play down. There's a lot of what's put in the public space, and there's a lot of what's being screamed literally behind the doors.
Mm.
And it's just it was time for something to be said. I just had to be tactful about it.
Okay. Um, can, can you be like, actually, I'm going to move to this one so I can get closer. Um, can you be a little more specific about what you mean, or do you kind of want to keep
Yeah,
it
so
vague?
each one ended up touching on a different kind of topic that I want to like mention. So that one in
Mm-hmm.
particular, mine, was pretty much just how like a lot of students, typically brown students, but you know, POC, rainbow students,
Mm-hmm.
minorities, they have a lot of voice to be heard. They have a lot of needs to be met, and those needs are simply not met. Those the institutions in particular will advertise diversity and inclusion
Mm-hmm.
and you know, safe spaces and environments, and it's not like that whatsoever, whether it be from your you know, your fellow classmates or the faculty themselves, or even just the policies or the way the institution runs. And so it's
Mm.
very undermining to sit here and try to just like be a voice of change or be an instigator of change in any way, shape, or form without it being, even if it gets attention, like it being skewed in some way, shape, or form.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I picked up on that in these. I mean, I didn't know of it being in like a collegiate
Mm-hmm.
setting, but obviously it doesn't need to be. It's just sort of anywhere, any kind of institution. But I really I appreciate you saying that and um, kind of detailing that a little bit more. Um, there are a lot of choices here that I think are interesting. I mean, and your use of yellow in general in your work is really um, cool. It's funny. I'm just seeing all these little yellow hands now,
Yeah.
like popping up that are waving at me, and I'm like, no,
I know.
yellow
Oh my
hand.
god.
But no. So you've chosen to do a yellow hand. I'm gonna assume like sort of instead of like a white hand or like a I don't know, like a dark like scary hand, or like just kind of talk about why yellow, and also that yellow shows up a lot in your work. I'm thinking in kind of like a menacing way. I might be wrong, but it'll show up in like the center of the eyes, like for irises and things. And so I just wondered if you could talk about that. And I'll move on to
It,
this one as well.
it's one of those things that depends. In specific for the triptych Black and Gold, it just so happens to be the institution in particular's school colors. And so
Oh, okay.
and
Yep.
it was
Okay.
one little fun way to like do my little thing. But yellow in particular in relation to emotional color theory has connotations with fear, unknown, confusion, while also having connotations with like joy, excitedness, energy. So it was having to keep in mind how to intentfully use emotional color theory to emphasize the narrative. So in my portraiture, a lot of the times my clients or my friends' subject matter, they have melanin. So when I start getting to like lighter areas of highlight, especially in reference photos, when using like colored ring lights, a lot of like the highlights are in the yellow family, which
Mm.
I find the use of yellow really funny because when I'm working with my palette or when I work with my palette, I use a lot of red and violet. So it's like it's funny how the yellow stands out in comparison to like all of what I like use because
Yeah,
even that painting itself, beside the hands, like the majority of it is in the red and orange family.
that is fascinating. Yes. I mean, so going back here, like, I mean, because I can see that your, this isn't giving you like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, in this case, it might, I'm wondering if it might be helpful for us to see the actual painting. Do you want to grab it real quick? If you hold it up really close to your camera, it could be kind of neat.
Like the glare sometimes is like tricky, but
True.
let's see. Like, maybe
Mm?
real quick. There we go.
Oh yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
You
that's
can see a little bit of the
because
texture.
see this way also is of course, like I'm sure you run into this a lot where you're transferring things to digital
Mm-hmm.
and then the colors change and everyone's monitors are different, and so you have to make like
Yes.
you're like, what is real? But that's like
Oh my
the
God.
thing. We're all looking at through our screens, but still, I do. So
At nighttime, unfortunately, so it's a little bit more skewed.
mm, it's true.
The textures
Um, oh wait, now I can't hear you as well. I think
Oh,
you're a
sorry.
little
I
bit
thought
muffled.
the textures of each one are like completely different for specific reasons. Just to show deterioration throughout this the process.
Mm.
But yeah, I
Like
get
that,
like
like that finger, the kind of index
Mhm.
finger seems like it's like really textured.
So the order that I typically like I wanted to show it was violate, starts out normal, corrupt, goes to like a little bit more like deterioration, and then undermine is just like my attempt at getting like muddy, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, I, I have a hard time like breaking form.
Um, say more about that. What do you mean by that?
I had like this thing in my head where I had to make sure that I was communicating what I wanted to communicate. So like if I was making a portrait, I wanted to make sure it looked like a portrait.
Mm.
I wasn't a fan of going out of bounds. So like I was afraid that if I started to experiment too much, like it would not have the same desired effect. It could fall flat. It could just not read well. It could have an entirely different connotation. And I just didn't have the heart to like experiment at the time.
Hmm. Okay, so but you are saying that you were trying these different techniques with the like the texture and the amount of you used a term that was interesting. I don't know, but you were playing with the different kinds of textures in order to tell even a more fuller story of what you were saying with these pieces. Because I was wondering, I mean, I guess the violate
Mm-hmm.
looks very much like almost like an impressionistic, and then
Mm-hmm.
the ones like really smooth, it's like that sort of hyper realism. It's like almost like so smooth. I might have the names mixed up, but you
Okay.
know,
I specifically chose Violate to be on the more realistic side, and Corrupt
this one.
and
Okay.
yeah, Violate on
Okay,
the
I had it
more
correct.
realistic side,
Mm.
just to like show the start of the series, and have a progression of some sort. So I wanted an evolution, both
Mm.
like technically and conceptually, because it would have been otherwise easy to sit here and do the same exact thing every single time.
Yes, I see. I see what you mean now. Well, they're just incredible, and it occurred to me that I think is this the one? Is this series at the BWI
It
or
was. It was.
okay?
I received it like a few months ago, but yeah, no, it was, and it was incredible. It was so
So
exciting.
I think that's where I learned about you.
Oh,
Like I think I was at the airport. I was going somewhere, and I was like, whoa, 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 back it up. Took the suitcase, rolled it back. Was like, I gotta see what this is. And it's just like, okay, I've got to figure out who this artist is. Um,
oh my God. So
yeah, I mean,
I literally found out about your photography through like one of my old clients, and so it was like I think you photographed them.
oh, that's interesting.
I know, and I was
Mhm.
like a small world.
Truly. And then yeah, I told like the Fatal Flaw editors about your submission that came in, and we just were over the moon, over the sun, over everything.
I was so
Um,
excited. I was like, oh, yeah, I get to put my artwork out there, so super fun.
yeah, and like one of the things that we really want to do at Fatal Flaw is lift artists up. We want um, well, opportunities like this for you to just be able to tell what you want to tell about your art, and like have a platform certainly in the magazine itself, and then in like the features that we run, and in conversations like this. um but I wonder in what ways you think that Fatal Flaw could help, and also like could kind of help you as an artist, like branch out, or in a more general sense, like what a publication can do for an artist like yourself. You're in a really interesting place in your life because you're also like okay, hold on, you just came into a career that you really like, which I also want to segue to that right now. But before we get into the tattoo artistry, like what could publications like Fatal Flaw or Fatal Flaw in particular do for you and for artists like yourself, do you think?
I think honestly, sessions like this are like incredible. I would actually love to hear more artist insight to this depth. And like I think that like transparency for the artists in the magazine, or even just like a chance for artists in general, just speak their mind on an educational but also like real level. It's super important. So like I'm super thankful for this opportunity. Like first of all, and I think that Fatal Flaws been actually been doing doing a really amazing job. Like
Good.
Interview questions, asking follow-up questions, as well as like after submission. I've never gotten that before from anything I submitted to. So and actually like asking for like exposure, like options and whatnot. Like that's just that is not so common practice from what I've experienced from submitting to mostly anything. Besides like like your Instagram tag, but like like that's it, like
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to know that you feel that way about Fatal Flaw. I mean, I think that's, well, not I think. I know that that's the number one mission for Fatal Flaw, is really to lift artists up. It started out as a literary magazine, and they worked in the visual arts, and it's all about just how can we get these artists the resources that they need, they want, platforms, education. We're starting a salon series so that you can actually come and learn about a particular topic, and really like explore something like you were saying, kind of things that are real world applications, like what do I do with my MFA degree, or like what do I do if I just graduated college, or like what if I don't have an MFA, like does that mean, like those kinds of topics, and then things that are more particular to certain crafts. But okay, so I love that, and I do want to talk about like the art life, the art career. So you weren't sure what you wanted to do, and then so tell me how this whole tattoo thing started, and also feel free to show off your tats that you have, because well, one of them that you have recently.
I have like my little 1111, and I'm not sure that the glare might like
cool.
find some things, but I have like some arm tattoos. I'm not sure if the glare like actually like does anything area.
I can see a
man.
little bit of it. Wait, those are tattoos that you did for yourself?
No.
Oh,
everything except for my one leg is like everyone else. But I like the glare.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I can post some like Instagram. Like,
wait, I have the picture of the one that you may have done on your.
That was on a friend, or the painting one of the
yes.
Yeah, that was on a friend.
Then I gotta show you that real quick, and why you can talk about it, because yeah, I was like, how did he do it to himself? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, that's not like one of my close friends. Oh my god.
It's so sick. It looks so good.
That's one of our it's like pretty much one of our journey pieces. We've been working together for almost a year now. Oh my god. So super thankful to like actually have like a painting tattoo out there. But the painting journey was kind of a whirlwind. It's not something that I like thought that I would like do, but I'm glad to be in the position. So I thought that I like it's insane. I literally thought that I would be a painter, but painting ended up not being the best method for me to communicate my art with everyone else. Like tattooing ended up being that way, and I'm glad there's like a better bridge now for that. Because I feel even more creative now that I'm tattooing. I'm not restricted to a specific subject matter. I would like only go for portraits, people, and like pets. When working in painting, and even then I never never really gave myself the chance, or even like I didn't even have the time to do as many paintings as I wanted to, because it was just like such a cathartic process at moments that it's it's not the most fun to sit there and dole yourself out and ask, will it sell? Or like, will this get like a few likes on Instagram, you know? So like,
Yes.
it was a better communicator, and like for everyone else and myself.
Yeah, I mean, but the fact that now you're creating these paintings and then making them into tattoos is
That's like
a new step, I guess.
it's I'm not even know how to explain it. I didn't know what I could do in tattooing until I just told myself that why should there be a limit? I have a bunch of different interests and a bunch of different things that I like love to like dig into. So tattooing and meeting all these different people and with all these different other interests, like we get to like combine ideas, and I and even they end up coming with like content that I or they would have never thought of beforehand. So it's like a process of getting to work with people to be even more creative than I would have been by myself.
Okay, that's amazing, because I also like I didn't even think about this as a question, but I definitely wanted to ask you about collaboration, and I think you sort of just answered that. Like, what an interesting new way to collaborate as an artist. Be like you're working with people and their ideas and creating visuals. Did you just freeze?
There we go.
Yeah. There you go. I was like, you'll be back.
But no, in terms of collaboration, I actually had an old roommate, and he pretty much like changed my perspective on like the entire way that like I present myself as an artist and have agency as well. And he pretty much presented the question like, what if we worked with people instead of for them? And after that, it was like, whoa, like, what if? And ever since then, like every time I like do any kind of business with anyone, I always like looking forward to working with you, or thank you for like working together, or something along those lines. Like, because I like to like emphasize that it is definitely a collaboration. It is never like solely one person's idea, because there has to be some kind of like middle ground. And
what was the last thing you said?
Oh, there has to be some kind of middle ground.
Middle ground. Yeah. And also that it is like when you start to think of it as something that you are offering people, like it's not just an exchange, of course, of like of money or some like good that you're providing. It's like you're offering someone an experience. You're offering someone.
Exactly.
I mean, definitely with tattooing, I mean, that is an experience. I personally do not have any tattoos. The only reason I don't is because I cannot like commit to one thing. Like I keep thinking like, wait, how would I ever decide? But either way, this isn't about me. But I think like that's definitely an experience. But then even like your commission work, you're still like they're giving you maybe a picture of like their themselves or their pet or whoever, and then you're coming up with a way to make that happen. But I'm sure there's like some conversation, like a story they might talk to you about, like their pet or what they want to capture or something.
If I remember correctly, the commission process, I pretty much wanted to get like all like the questions out the way before they even like come to me. So I like would I would pretty much get all the info from them as to what they wanted in like the painting. So the background color, the style, the
I have a kitty.
Yeah. So like you know, like if someone said like I want a realism cat with a green background, like okay, like that's all I have to say. I'll take care of the rest. Send a reference photo. And
yeah. Yes. And then like when you have I guess when you're working more with people for commission work, it's a little bit different. They might have like more say, or is it not? I'm not sure. Like, well, that wasn't.
I guess that comes down to like also like working with people. There are just some subject matter or some things that are asked of me that I just simply like cannot or should not or will not do. And in that case, like I will recommend someone else to you who is better off fulfilling your vision. But what I typically like to tell people, like, if your basis is something along the line, or if your basis is in realism, if you like animals, if you like portraiture, figurative paintings, then we can definitely work together. My only caveat really was just like landscapes and like architecture and whatnot. If it wasn't living, I probably just wouldn't like paint it.
Ooh, I like that as a quote, as a little pull quote. Like, if it's not living, I'm not going to paint it. Like, you got to be fully alive, fully present. I love it. I was just going to kind of go through a couple of these other paintings of yours that I just love so much. And again, with the yellow eyes and that sort of the fear, but the energy you talked about there being and what else in yellow?
For some of the paintings, especially, it's more of an aesthetic choice, just to have glowing eyes. Especially like for people with like darker eyes, there's always just like that plain connotation. So I just want to give a little bit more emphasis.
I see. Yeah, I think we might have gone over that one. Yeah.
The ethereal quality every now and then.
Yeah, it really does. It adds so much. What? Oh, I was gonna ask you just like a kind of a bigger question, but I just wondered what motivates you as an artist to create in general, or I guess like where did that kind of come from? And yeah,
it's truthfully the best way I know how to communicate. Like, as you've seen, I probably like stumbled like here and there with my words every now and then. But at least like in a painting, or at least in artwork in general, there's a lot to be seen that may not even be able to be said, but otherwise more so felt. And I think that that's like where I really like find my source in creating in general. Like, I create to have a pathos charged narrative. I am not a fan of just having a technically sound anything. There, for me at least, I strive to have a level of emotional, maybe not even clarity, but emotional level to it. And sometimes like I want to leave people guessing as to like what that could be. Other times I want to be a little more deliberate. And even if that ends up having different perceptions for other people, then I know I've still done my job like right. Like it's
yes,
it's interesting.
I love that. Like to be a communicator. Like what motivates you to create art is to communicate as clearly as you can. Like that you have a lot to say, you want your message to be received, and so you're going to do that through your art. And I will say that also your writing is really clear. Like your writing is really, really not just clear. It's powerful. So I think like those two pieces together too. I mean, in the way that you love like titles, and it sounds like you like love mythology, or you love like history, or there's some kind of connection there.
I have like I've always, even growing up, I used to like go to private school back in England, and there was this like Greek mythology book that had like all this amazing artwork in it, and that like 100% inspired me, especially my tattoo designs. So there's been the aspect of having a religious influence growing up, and dealing with that in some sort of way through my art that may not be able to be said, just for the sake of avoiding potential conflict. Or sometimes it's more of using what I do know about religious texts to emphasize a narrative further. There's a drawing in particular that was heavily religious inspired.
Mm-hmm.
That ended up having a really skewed context in relation to like another. But for the most part, there's a level of invocation
Mm.
when dealing with religious anything. There's dramatic lighting, there's the posing, there's what you choose to accentuate. So like one thing I mean, I love eyes 100%. That's like the actual seller of like anything that I do. I like so what is this all? And so like it's just like I don't know. I can go on for hours. I can go on for hours. Oh my god.
I do. I did want to. You have it actually right behind you, but I'll bring it up here as well. When you talked about the like religious aspect, something about that hits me in this one that we had in the, oh my god, in the magazine, and that it's right behind you.
You're right. Yeah. So,
and I mean, that sort of dramatic lighting, the obviously like very apparent cold and warm tones in this one, but it almost comes across as some kind of like a punishment, like this person is being punished for something, and there's this kind of duality in this figure that's maybe like almost like a heaven and a hell or something like that going on in this person. And I would love for you to speak to that, but I also came across another photograph of yours that might have given me a little more context into where that came from. Tell me if I'm wrong, but like I think like this, if you're using that kind of like light and then you're reinterpreting or you're interpreting it in paint.
It all depends. Like I like making sure that I have a solid value range from darkest dark to lightest lights. So that it's like a foundation for myself. And then in my religious inspired like paintings, there is that like light from above. Like sometimes I'll like show the light source, sometimes I won't have light source whatsoever. But there's like that like it's always a light from above usually. Which is also inspired from my religious painting. But for this painting in particular, Cruel Sunrise, I believe, the original title was Phoenix Moment. And it was pretty much in response to just like having a burnout phase in painting. And just being like overall concerned about my future, especially during the time when I knew my transition out of painting was coming and I wasn't sure to what. So, and like everyone's always like, there's always like those like inspirational people and like those quotes that are like, you know, like the sun always rises and whatnot and all that fun stuff. But like for me in my headspace at the time, it felt like no matter what good happened in the fine arts world for me, the next day just kept coming. It was the same day. So I posted this on Twitter actually when I first like had made the painting. And the quote I believe was like the sunrise can be so fucking cruel. And that's like quite literally what I felt like at the time. Like it was working on this painting from like day to night, and I'm just like this. It hurts to create. Like it hurts to like keep making this.
Wow. I mean, it's thank you for sharing that. I think it's also like it's so interesting to hear you say like that it was kind of the end of your painting career. Like, I mean, hopefully it's not, but I think what you're saying is like you were transitioning from doing that full time every day. You lived and breathed it, and you had a mentor for it. Yes, and it was everything, and you were like, okay, now I have to start doing something else because you're entering into
it's just simply not working out the way that I expected it to, or the way that and even like the way that I needed it to. And I think that ultimately painting was more so for me, and like before everything ended up happening, I like recall vividly saying a lot like I just like wish that painting was for me again, for real. I don't want to once again, like sit here and worry about, oh, will this painting sell, after spending days, weeks, months on something and worrying about like producing work at a high volume while still maintaining a certain quality and depth that wouldn't be achievable just going back to back to back to back to back. For me, at least. For me.
Yeah, so like you kind of didn't like the machinery of it. Like you didn't want to have to think about like, okay, I have to make this much money doing this painting, and like it started to become work.
I didn't mind it so much for commissions because they were never my ideas, and it was just up to me to deliver someone's vision. So I didn't mind it in that aspect as much. The only part about that was just people in honor of their departed ones do want them commemorated in some way, shape, or form, and it just happens to be through painting, and it becomes really heavy when you have a bunch of dearly departeds in your living room, especially at night. But you have to like have such a sensitivity for what you're doing because every single like mark matters, and the final product especially matters because you want to make sure you're presenting them in an appropriate way, in a loving way.
Yeah.
So it's a lot
so
to do. It's a lot of pressure.
It truly is. And so you're sort of saying with that, and then you also had like in your own work, you don't want to feel like you're kind of working to make this certain dollar amount off of this artwork, or like, oh, I want to make sure it meets these criteria, like
Right.
whatever. Like you wanted to make it your own work. Well, yes, we do sort of have to wrap up at this point. I can't believe it's already been now. Right? I'm like my face is all hot because I'm like all excited. And I had the heater on in here, which was crazy.
My face looks like tired. I'm like puffy.
Thank you so very much for speaking with us. I guess like two questions. First is, where do you want to be found? This podcaster always asks it that way. Where do you want to be found?
I was to answer. Should you ask the
Nope.
two questions first?
No, go ahead. Yep.
I have tattoo brain. Oh my god, it's been such a long 3 hours.
It's all good.
I would love to be found on either my painting Instagram, eric.robinson, or my tattoo page, Tats by yours truly, TATTS. And I don't really use Twitter that much anymore. I'll 100% be more active on my tattoo page, so that will be the best way to find me.
Okay,
I
wonderful.
unfortunately just am on a hiatus from painting for the time being, so it's more of a personal account now for like dancing and photography and just like life.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay, so we didn't, and that was my other question, was about painting, like anything that you're working on right now, but we'll just follow your Tats account and we'll see what you got going on there.
Once I'm in the space to actually like I guess have more of a work-life balance, then I would definitely consider like having painting again. But at the moment, there's quite literally just not the space for it.
Yeah.
Like internally or externally. It's
that's wonderful to have those boundaries. Just you're like, nope, this is what I'm going to concentrate on right now, and you know that you have the skill and the love for it, so it'll
always be there. But
yeah.
It's quite literally on my balcony, so it'll always be there no matter what.
I love that. All right, well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Fatal Flaw Volume 9. Eric's in there. We've got so much good work, so many amazing artists, visual artists, writers, everybody. So thank you all, and follow Eric, follow everything he does.
I'll be posting more tattoos soon, so like keep that out.
Yeah.
But no, like once again, thank you so much. Like this has been an incredible session. So I hope I can like come back in the future.
Yay! Yes, for sure. All right. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.